Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. Today I have a post from the Neville subreddit that I am going to share with you guys called "What is SATS and how to enter it every time." I think this is important because for a lot of people, myself included, the idea of the state akin to sleep can be a bit abstract, and I really have a goal to break it down so that you can know you're in that feeling every single time. And my goal is actually to create a meditation, a guided meditation that I will have up on the channel that without fail will bring you into the state akin to sleep. And so with that being said, guys, developing this understanding of what it is so that we know that we're in it, we know that we're doing it right, ridding ourselves of any doubts of whether we have entered into this state or not. That is the goal. So with that being said, let's get into the post. So first, let us define what exactly SATS is according to Neville himself. So this is important quotes from a television interview he gave in 1955. "I first induced a dreamy state, and the reason for this," and let me also preface this by saying that if you study these different forms of meditation, hypnosis, that Jose Silva has a technique called the Silva mind control method. They're all speaking about the same thing. You've got hemisync, which is also by Robert Monroe. These are all, and this has been acknowledged now. There's a report. I saw a video that was really, really well done. And it's about the CIA report, because they've done these disclosure on these documents about hemisync technology, binaural beats technology, how it has the ability to put you into this state. And they're talking about the state akin to sleep, where your subconscious is receptive to new ideas and where you really are developing abilities that you wouldn't have otherwise. Your heart begins to beat in this synchronous manner where your whole electromagnetic field that you are as a person becomes wider and larger. So there is science that is backing this up, and I want to really explore that and deep dive into that into upcoming videos. And it's going to take some research on my end, so bear with me. But this is just a post that we're going to cover because I want to go in this direction so that we can really, really explore this in a powerful way. I don't think many people are talking about this. So with that being said, this is his quote. So, "I first induced a dreamy state, and the reason for that is this." He quotes in the Bible, "In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instruction." And the way that I interpret that as well is that we are in a state where we can receive intuitions, we can receive downloads. And I've experienced this myself. When I've gotten into this state, and there are powerful states I've gotten into where I've heard what, it sounds strange to say this, but it's almost as if the voice of source itself, or there is a voice that is guiding me, telling me what to do. And it could be experienced as a voice, it could be experienced as a knowing, it could be experienced in different ways. That you could have a vision, you could have a feeling of, oh, an intuition, this is what I have to do now. It's very powerful. And people, even in Silicon Valley, people are using drugs such as LSD, psilocybin, mushrooms to develop this, to be in touch with this field, to get downloads, to get inspiration. It's like people are really using this. It doesn't get talked about very much in mainstream, but it's more and more becoming more and more acceptable to talk about. I mean, it is very widely known and commonly known that all of Silicon Valley is using nootropics and all of these different things, microdosing and stuff like that. So these are very, very, they have real applications, and people are definitely using them. And I'm touching on that aspect, but regardless, you don't need to use psilocybin or any of these other things. You can have these types of experiences by tapping into this state. So sitting in that chair, I induced a drowsy state, that dreamy, drowsy state that borders upon sleep. But to induce it, and sorry, I keep interrupting myself. But this was also something that Thomas Edison did. He would sit in a chair with metal balls in his hand over a glass bowl, and he would drift into this state. And that is where he got ideas for a lot of his inventions. He would do this so that he would wake up and drift in and out of the state with the metal balls in his hand so that he didn't actually completely fall asleep. But there are so many stories like this out there, and it would be cool to actually compile a list of them at some point. But anyways, guys, I apologize that I keep interrupting myself, but this just has so much relevance. So here it is. So sitting in that chair, I induced a drowsy state, that dreamy, drowsy state that borders upon sleep, but to induce it only to a certain extent. If you carry it too far, you go to sleep, just like I mentioned, and then you lose control of the direction of your attention. That is something you must always maintain and be under your control, not the control of another, much like lucid dreaming. So I had to induce it only to a certain point, and just before I slept, I arrested that state. You may say that consciousness is likened to an ocean or to a tide. It ebbs and flows. The ebb tide is this very moment where my critical faculties are being exercised. I know exactly where I'm seated in the studio and know what I'm doing. That is not state of the flood tide, when I do not know what I'm doing, which is the unconsciousness of sleep. But between these two extremes of the flood tide of unconsciousness of sleep and the ebb tide, when all the critical faculties are being exercised, there are any number of intermediary states between these two extremes. I wanted the state that borders upon sleep, so because I'm speaking of a tide, I will call that now the high tide. This high tide lifts the man easily off the bars of the senses, where he is long laying stranded. So I was stranded on my senses, for they told me I couldn't get out of the island, or that I heard my brothers tell me, my father told me. They confirmed my senses. So here I am stranded on the bar of my senses. And then they said, if you were interested, the entire thing is here. I can leave a link to that, this interview here. So my personal understanding, it is pretty evident from other information about this. Neville is talking about hypnagogia, which occurs during the transitional period of wakefulness to sleep, when alpha waves are decreasing, but you haven't yet reached the first stage of sleep. And Jose Silva calls this the alpha state. During this period, your sense of here and now transitions from the real world to the dream world. Now, a lot of people mix hypnagogia or SATS with terms like theta waves, the phase, or REM sleep. However, there are slight distinctions. Hypnagogia and REM dreams are not the same. You experience hypnagogia every time you fall asleep, whether you are close to REM sleep or not. As others I've experienced, these hypnagogic dreamlets can be very vivid. However, they are not dreams in the proper sense. You could say REM is a more drawn out and deeper version of hypnagogia. However, this distinction in terminology doesn't really matter as much as you can shift/manifest in both these states. How to enter SATS each time. Earlier, I thought you need to specifically be in REM sleep in order to enter SATS, but turned out I was wrong. I was wrong a few nights ago. I spent the entire evening outdoors hiking, and when I came back home, I was too exhausted to do anything, so I just went to bed. I remembered SATS, so I chose to remain somewhat aware throughout the whole process. Then I went through a cycle like this: fully awake, to my eyes closing on their own, to mind thoughts slowing down a lot more, to hypnagogic/2D dream images based on the day's experience popping up now, to 3D dreamlike scenes were forming. I'm losing all control here unless I decide not to, and then fell asleep. As for the exact way I enter SATS, I just lay down in a comfortable position, one I sleep in, and just fake pretend that I'm sleeping, keeping attention on the darkness behind my eyes. After a while, 5 to 10 minutes, it feels like my outside environment, including my body, is shape-shifting and becoming very fluid and white. Bright lights or orbs are forming and combining. I don't know how to describe this part, but the best way would be that reality loses its sense of solidity. I like that. Then the dream images scenes start forming, and voila, we are in SATS now. Now this is the moment we do our scene / use our imagination, and don't worry if it is not as vivid as you'd like. Keep repeating it and focus on the scene only. What happens next freaks me out still to this day. After the second or third loop, the scene will start becoming animated / alive, and other details you are not focusing on will get thrown into it by your subconscious. Like what clothes you're wearing. And finally, it is around the fourth or fifth loop, you will be inside your scene completely, and it is as vivid as waking reality right now. Around this time, you would wake up in your DR because your focus was so much on the scene and feeling it, you will not realize that you fell asleep in your DR. I'm not sure what he's saying, DR, dream reality, or maybe I missed something there. So it turns out you actually do enter SATS each night and every time you sleep, regardless. I wanted to test this after I read The Law and the Promise and on some of Orion's posts recently, which were testimonial success stories talked about doing the technique at night. I felt there was no way I was any different, and if they could do it at night, so can I. Also, I was kind of tired of waking up and doing WBTB, LOL. I'm not sure what that stands for either, which also works really well. If you still have difficulties entering SATS, there might be a few reasons why based on my experiences. The next night, I wanted to enter SATS again, but before I did, before bed, I wanted to enter SATS again before bed, but it did not happen, and I know exactly why. My mind was too active. I was on my phone for a few hours prior to this, and I couldn't mentally shut down when I hit the bed. It took me nearly an hour to fall asleep, in between which I gave up and just passed out without consciously experiencing the SATS part, whereas that other day, I was not even near my electronic devices for a few hours and entered it in 10 minutes. I don't know how things were in Neville's time, but I sure as hell know people weren't scrolling through reels before bed. Now, some people don't need to do all this, but if you've tried everything, this might be worth a shot. Some other things that also help me are regular sleep schedule, no caffeine or sugar, no subliminals, no electronics at least 1 hour before bed, daily Vipassana meditation for 10 to 15 minutes earlier in the day. I have to also mention it is very easy to fall asleep in SATS while doing your scene / affirmations in it. So if you have trouble falling asleep with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are probably not in the right state. Okay. Yeah, so there's some comments here. This is a wonderful instructional, but I want to let people know that you can reach the fulfilled state with daytime daydreaming and light visualization. The OP said, absolutely, I agree, but sleeping in the feeling seems to manifest very quickly in my experience. So yes, people also agree you can do this anytime during the day, or you can also, manifest anytime during the day. Like I mentioned, Thomas Edison had that exercise, and a lot of people do prefer doing this during the day. So somebody says, can you elaborate more? All right, so he says, if you listen to that YouTube interview link, read Orion's posts, see testimonials from the Law and the Promise, they all have one thing in common. They fell asleep in that state. It did not take them longer than 2 to 4 weeks to see the harvest in their outer reality. Most, if not all, manifested in under a week. It doesn't matter what the desire was. $1 million or climbing a ladder, they got it very quickly by sleeping in it. Neville himself says, but I do believe in sleeping in it. It seems to hasten the outward realization of my desire. Yes, later on, Neville could just imagine things out of thin air without SATS, but he started experiencing the promise and then could do things like stop time at will, teleport, biolocate to different locations, etc. Nobody knows when the promise will be revealed to us by our Father, but we know. Okay, I don't know what he's talking about there. But in any case, okay, I just want to really quickly go, because people are relating their experiences about this. So Somebody says, damn, whenever I get into that state, I start my scene, and then 20 seconds later, I suddenly notice my scene has shifted to me being a dragon slayer, fighting 2 giants or something without me even noticing, and I have to start over again. This repeats for 10 times before I give up or focus on my scene. Okay. Well, anyways, guys, I basically, he gets pretty lengthy here with the second part of the post, but I really like this quote from Neville here, this full paragraph that we read. I will also leave a link to the full interview here. You know, everyone has their own techniques, but this is cool that this person has outlined exactly what they do. And it may be worthwhile to follow this as a guide if you are having difficulty entering into the state akin to sleep. I also know that other people mention, you know, I've mentioned before on the channel about Dr. Andrew Huberman, who is a professor at Stanford, and there's a lot of people that talk about this, about, you know, limiting your social media use before bed, if that could maybe be interfering with this. You know, I sometimes have trouble going to sleep at night myself, and my mind is very active. So that could be something, there could be something to that, you know, like talking about the regular sleep schedule, trying those different things. It's really just going to be an experiment with each of us to decide, to see what works for us and how we're able to enter this. So useful to see how this person was able to do it. They give their full process here. And one thing that stood out to me here was, as I lay down in a comfortable position, keeping attention on the darkness behind my eyes. After a while, it feels like my outer environment, including my body, is becoming more fluid and white. Bright lights or orbs are forming and combining. And the reality loses its sense of solidity. I really like that part. Then dream images and scenes start forming, and voila, we are in SATS now. This is the moment where we use our scenes and use our imaginations. Don't worry if it's not as vivid as you like. Keep repeating and focus on the scene only. What happens next freaks me out. After the second or third loop, the scene starts becoming animated and alive. Other details you are not focusing on will get thrown into it by your subconscious, the clothing you're wearing. Finally, around the 4th or 5th loop, you will be inside your scene completely, and it is vivid as waking reality right now. Around this time, you would wake up. So yeah, I really like that because it really mimics my experience of lucid dreaming. You know, with lucid dreaming, it happens for me a lot of the time when I'm on the verge of waking up in the morning. I'll have a lucid dream and then be aware that I'm dreaming, but it will be that vivid. It will be like reality, or sometimes perhaps even more vivid than reality, if you can imagine that. I mean, that's how lucid dream feels to me sometimes, the lucid dreams that I have. But this process, I like it a lot. There's some things that stood out to me. Like I said, reality loses its sense of solidity. The darkness behind your eyes, that could be a technique to enter into this. They talk about in hypnosis how a very ancient form of hypnosis is staring at one spot and focusing on one point, because your mind begins to shut down. Your mind stops being so active. It allows itself. It has to do with our biology. They used to do this in Egypt, they used to stare at intricate designs in cups, and it causes this shutting down of the mind. I think it was mentioned somewhere that, you know, when we're able to focus on one point, it means that we're physically safe. It means that we can shut down our brain. We don't have to be aware anymore. So anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think about this. Do you guys have a process that you believe works for you? I would love to know if you do and what that is, because like I said, I'm very interested in this particular topic, how we can make it easy for people to replicate this so that we can get into SATS every single time and come up with, you know, a guide. I want to come up with a guided meditation for you guys where it allows us to enter into that state every time. We don't have to do any guesswork. We don't have to, you know, try to do it, but just let go, sit back, and allow ourselves to drift into the state. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Drop me a like, drop me a comment, hit me with the subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you guys in the next video.